Hey everybody, welcome back to Auto Anatomy. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us. Today we're back working on our 66 Thunderbird, and one of the things that happened on the last episode that I didn't really talk about was I noticed when out for a drive that the temp gauge would get hot, and it didn't really seem like the car was overheating. I mean, I'd pop the hood and the hoses didn't really feel all that hot. I took my little infrared thermometer and it was showing like 180 degrees, but the gauge was pegged, and sometimes the gauge would work well. So I've watched enough Roadkill episodes to know that there is one thing that always takes them down when they do like a barn find sort of rescue thing, and that's the cooling system. I mean, how many cars have they ended up driving around in with the hoods off of them? So since we're going to be driving this thing across the southern part of the country, across Texas, New Mexico, in the summertime, I'm bound and determined to make sure that doesn't happen. So on this episode, we're going to go through the cooling system again, change out the water pump, go through the radiator, take it to our favorite shop here in town, Matt's, and get the air conditioning up and running hopefully as well. So let's get started. There comes a point in every project when you realize that things are a lot bigger than you really expected, and they kind of snowball. So I got the water pump off, and I wanted to get the balancer off because you couldn't really see the timing marks. And I wanted to clean it up and just, paint it so you could see where top dead center was. And I got to thinking, this car's got 100,000 miles on it, has an oil leak here, and we're not that far away. What about doing timing chain? I think this is going to be the best chance that we have to do it. Let's dig in. So yeah, this thing was slap worn out. I mean, look at that. I don't know if you can tell or not, but there's an inch of slack here, and in the 60s they were using like fiber gears on the cams, and I just don't think that would have lasted long. So here's the very reason why we decided to pull the timing cover instead of just doing the water pump. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell, but all of these little cracks, let's see if it'll focus, on every tooth on the timing gear. This would have left us stranded somewhere. let's get it changed out. All right, so we picked up a few parts at our local parts store here. Now let's go drop the radiator off at Matt's and get it taken care of. Got my dots all lined up. Alright, torque spec says 35 to 45 foot-pounds, so we're just going to split the difference and go 40. Make sure our dots are still lined up, and it looks like they are. I think we're ready to put a timing cover back on this thing. You know, if I'd known we were going to do this, I could have waited to do the fuel pump. I mean, look how easy this is to get to, he says. And this is a whole lot more than I bargained for, I'm telling you. But I think it had to be done. There's just no way that we could have driven this thing across country the way that it was. So I guess it was worth it. Well, let's keep going. We got to put the water pump on, the balancer, and then as soon as the radiator comes back, we'll be able to change the oil, fire it up, and see what happens. So here's your only slightly useful tidbit for the day. The bottom water pump bolts on an FE go into a water passage, so make sure that you're putting thread sealant on them. And just to make sure, we're going to put a brand new coolant temp sender.
So since the radiators at Matt's getting taken care of, we're going to take this opportunity to do a few things that would be a pain to do with the radiator still in the car.
Namely, we're going to work on the air conditioning condenser. Now, the heart of any AC system is a compressor, but probably the kidneys are going to be the receiver dryer. So this thing is just full of like a desiccant that dries out moisture, and the biggest killer of AC systems, especially on older cars, is moisture getting in there. So this thing after 50 years is probably toast. There's doubtful any desiccant left in that thing. So we're going to take this opportunity while the radiator is out of the car, get the condenser cleaned up, and replace the receiver dryer with a brand new one. All right, we've got our brand new receiver dryer. This one came from Old Air Products. You can find receiver dryers as cheap as like 20 bucks on eBay, and basically it's just a canister filled with desiccant. There's nothing special about it. On 66, it's a unique model, so it's very different than the 64 and 65. So unfortunately, this one was a little bit more than that just because it was unique. But you'll see it's labeled in and out, but basically there's only one way that this thing can bolt on. So let's get this bolted on and get the condenser back in the car. Alright, so we got the radiator back from Matt's, and I have to say this thing looks fantastic. You see their little stamp there. They went through the whole thing and cleaned it out, flushed it out, resoldered it. There was some weeping on one of the end tanks, and they got it all cleaned out, pressure tested, painted. Listen, if you're in the Colorado area, Matt's is the only place that you need to take your classic radiator to. They're the only shop that we use on this channel, and I highly recommend Matt's Radiator in Colorado Springs. All right, so we got everything back together, and you can see the engine is cold, and we're gonna try and fire it up for the first time. So fingers crossed we got everything back together correctly. Okay, so it doesn't have any fuel in it. Let's... Seems like it's running okay. We have oil pressure. I think we did it. Now, let's let this thing warm up a little bit and charge the air conditioning, see if that works. All right, since R12 is kind of impossible to get for the average guy, we went ahead and did the conversion to 134, and on this compressor, I think this is a Tecumseh since it's iron. The only difference between the Tecumsehs and the Yorks were the Yorks were aluminum bodies where the Tecumsehs were iron. Otherwise, it's the exact same compressor. But anyway, so the bottom hose here is our discharge and the top is suction. Alright, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, but it has suction and discharge right on the compressor, just in case you don't know which is which. So you've got the fittings on here, the low side and the high side, and on these compressors, in order to open them up, they've got a little valve on the back, and what you have to do is they are tightened, or excuse me, they are loosened all the way, because there's a little cone seal right here, and you've got to open them up, but not so much that that cone seal goes in and blocks off the hose. So you've got to open it up, and I think the manual says it's like 4 turns in order to get the little cone seal so where it's between the compressor, the nozzle, or between the compressor, the fill adapter, and the hose. So let's get our gauges on there and get that done. Alright, so 134 is going in. Well, I ran out of Freon, but you can see our pressures are still really low. So the system's working pretty well. Let's go see what our vent temperature is. So despite the fact that it's so low on Freon, we're getting about 40-degree temperature coming out of the vents. That's not bad. I'll take it. Oh, 39. It's getting colder. Alright, so we got it all back together, and you can see it's running pretty well again. I've got some carburetor issues that I'm just not happy with. I noticed that sometimes it'll just start running really bad, and I heard some like sloshing when I shut the engine off, and fuel was pouring over into the secondaries. Popped the top off, and the needle and seat weren't sealing. I mean, the float was completely under fuel, and it was trying as best as could. It just wasn't sealing all that well. So I think I need to go through the carburetor one more time. Maybe put another set of floats in it and another new needle and seat, and hopefully we can get this thing where it's running a whole lot better. It's just got a little misfire right there, just off idle. But overall, it's running pretty well. And as a bonus, the air conditioner works. So all in all, we ended up doing a whole lot more work than really expected to, just to cure that overheating issue. I have to give a special shout out to Matt at Matt's Radiator in Colorado Springs. Please make sure you check him out if you're in the Colorado area and need any kind of work done. We'll do a future video at his place and just kind of go through what is involved in doing a quality restoration of a radiator. So look for that in a future video. If you like the kind of things that you see here, make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button and click the bell to be notified when all new videos come out. That's going to do it for now. We'll see you next time.